Hello and welcome to the Nerds at Large Spoilercast for Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm one of your hosts, Darby Hallman,
I'm Jeff Mayo.
and we are joined today by two amazing special guests. We have Mr. Brent, Mr. Brent Gillahan.
Hey, what's up?
And we have
I'm
Mr.
Mr. Spider-Man.
Mr. Spider-Man. Just look at all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel completely underdressed.
Might as well take all the stuff off.
Yeah, I mean, might as well. You know? And we have Mr. William Outlaw.
Hello.
And we also have to turn to William Outlaw because from the moment one of him being on Nerds at Large content, it was all about Marvel stuff. I would turn to no one else.
Fair.
I'm the superhero guy.
Yeah, honestly, both of you are kind of the two superhero guys as far as the Nerds at Large friend multiverse that we have going on. So
I'm the
so
one
happy.
guy you talk to about Marvel's Avengers. I'm
Right.
that guy.
Oh yeah.
he is in the weeds. He is in the weeds if you
Yeah.
can talk to him about Marvel's Avengers. Well, if you never watched one of our spoilercasts, we are going to spoil the mess out of this movie. I would at first just say I think we all recommend you should go see this movie, right? I mean, if you have not seen No Way Home, you should definitely go see it. Definitely watch the other Tom Holland movies first. I would probably do that, but even then, I think you could walk into this movie and still enjoy it. You know, I think it's definitely one that I recommend. It's a very good time. Everything.
No, this movie's trash. Don't fill up the theater so I can go watch it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
Listen to
No,
Brent.
this movie, it's great.
So from this point onwards, if you have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, please go do so before you listen to the spoiler cast. With that being said, let's start off with you, Jeffrey. What do you think about Spider-Man No Way Home?
It was good. It had a lot going on in it. It had, they tried to hide the whole multiple Spider-Man thing, and yes,
Yeah.
I was surprised to read that people that didn't know it was a thing, but I think overall they handled it very well. It could have gone really bad just with everything going on, but I think they handled it really well. Had some problems with some of the story beats and some stuff, and some of the decisions they made, but overall, very fun.
Absolutely.
Jeff, have you seen all of the Spider-Man movies?
Yes.
How about you, Darby?
I have not seen either of the Andrew Garfield movies.
Okay.
I missed those. Yeah. Will, how
I
about
feel
you?
like
Go ahead.
Me?
Go ahead.
I've seen all of them.
Yeah. Well, what'd you think about this one?
Oh, sorry.
No, you good.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it a lot. The reason why I was asking that is just I think your enjoyment level will largely depend on how much nostalgia you have for those movies. So for me, it was tip top. I loved every minute of the movie. But if you had only seen like one Tobey Maguire movie, if you just saw Spider-Man 3, then I'm not sure if you're gonna really like it all that much. It's probably just gonna be way more confusing than anything. So I don't know, as someone who has seen all of these movies, pretty sure seen them all in theaters as they were coming out. It was huge for me. I loved it, but I understand why people who aren't like us probably aren't super into it. Maybe still say it's a fine movie, but aren't head over heels for it. So
I will correct you on one thing. That person doesn't exist because anyone who only saw Spider-Man 3 would have stopped watching superhero movies. So they wouldn't be watching this right now.
Spider-Man 3 is good if you see it as a comedy.
Still underrated.
Yeah.
Brent, No Way Home.
I loved it, man. It was such a great movie. I've seen it twice now. I really loved it. I don't know if I had nostalgia. I don't know if that's why it played in. Obviously there's like some tie of nostalgia of loving the character, it being my favorite character and right next to Batman. Love him so much. But I don't know if I loved like the villains part of it because I liked the movies. I just think they handled them very well. Like besides this being Sam Raimi's like Green Goblin was great. No matter like whose Green Goblin it was, I think like they handled it very well, and I was really surprised that for me it wasn't nostalgia bait. They handled everything perfectly. The villains were really good. Sandman, we'll talk about it. Sandman deserves more respect than people are giving him. Lizard didn't do anything, but the others, like, I feel like most of them are handled like very well, and they did what they needed to do. The Spider-Men were handled very well. They came in when they needed to be. The interactions felt authentic. So yeah, I loved the movie, man. I had such a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really it's just a fun movie to watch. I've seen it twice now, and it's just it goes by super fast. It is just it's you have a good time the entire time, and just when you stop and think about like the scope of what this movie was, tying like all these three universes that had. There was no plans of this being a giant multiverse when those movies were made, obviously, and just having to like tie all this together and make it not feel completely just wacky and stupid, but make it work. But it also there's just a lot they were having to juggle there, and I feel like that part of the movie I think is the thing that they overall did the best as far as bringing these characters in and making them feel like they can belong in this world, but also they are recognizably like. That's Willem Dafoe's crazy ass, Green Goblin. And it's
I think the fact that Daredevil was in this movie and I keep forgetting just shows you like how many cool things are in this movie that like Daredevil would be the highlight of like most MCU movies. Like, oh shit, is Daredevil. But with this one, there's so many good things that work for me that I always forget about Daredevil when I'm thinking about the movie, because I'm thinking about the Spider-Man and he beat the shit out of Green Goblin and it was awesome and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was just the movie goes in a mile a minute for sure. But at the same time, I do think that a lot of the smaller moments still were able to breathe, and like for instance, MJ and Ned are like two of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
And the dynamic that they have with Peter is like, I was glad that we still got to have a lot of that, because I just went back and rewatched Homecoming. That was one of my favorite parts of Homecoming, is you get to see Peter being a kid, and you get to see like his life outside of being Spider-Man. Obviously you get a lot less of that in No Way Home, but I still think that was still there, and they're just very good at pacing these movies at this point.
There are people that say that they don't feel like Ned and MJ got enough growth up until this movie and things like that. But for me, I enjoyed their inclusion in this movie so much because it's in every movie, because I feel like I grew up with these movies. So it's kind of like I'm friends with them, I'm hanging out. They're my friends and I'm seeing them again on the movie. So it's like I feel like their inclusion was really good. And it was cool seeing them interact. They had like a lot to do in this movie. All the side characters worked. Like you said, every little down moment worked just as much as like the action packed scenes. I feel like this is the first MCU Spider-Man movie, if that makes sense, and I feel like it was handled very well and I was really happy about it.
Definitely disagree with that. with the first MCU Spider-Man movie. We're gonna get to that discussion at some point. But in general, like this is one of the movies. This felt I don't even know how to quantify this exactly, but this is the movie that felt the most like a comic book movie. I feel like almost any of these have felt, with just a lot of the action scenes, like especially like the three Spider-Man jumping out of the tower and everything. Like, it just looked like a comic book panel, like come to life there.
All them charging against the villains and all that kind of shit.
And that face off, Sinister Six vibe. It's not Sinister
Getting
Six,
to
but it
see
feels
him punch the lizard.
They thought they were smooth and they knew what they were doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, just in general, I like the combat. I like a lot of this stuff, and just like the pacing of the movie. It's a testament to this movie that you were able to have like the gut punch of like Aunt May dying, and then the very next scene is in Ned's grandma's house. The wackiest way to possibly introduce.
Oh, by the way,
Spider-Man.
multiple Spider-Man.
And the way that it's able to juggle those like tones and stuff, like it's a hard thing for sure. Yeah,
I think it worked very well because the tones, like, it didn't go from like an upbeat like chilling in the grandma's house, like it still had like a very dark tone. I think the tone was very present in this movie, where I feel like the other ones weren't quite. And I love the other ones, but there wasn't quite a really good like central tone in the other ones, and I feel like this one really honed in on one. Even with the first half being jokey and light, and the second half being dark, I feel like they meshed together really well.
Yeah, but they mix a lot of that in. There is like the dark end. There's like a lot of levity, a lot of like serious moments, which the MCU's gotten so good at. But like this is random, but like I think, and I was kind of surprised with this. I think Andrew Garfield might have been like my favorite. I think he might have been my favorite of the Spider-Man. There's just like so many of his.
I've been telling people for years.
But I just love
the best Spider-Man.
I love that they leaned into him being like the least popular Spider-Man and stuff. Yeah, but they like lean into it so hard.
3.
I'm along for the ride.
It's so good. I love you're amazing. I love that. That's so good. Cheesy but good. I think it's handled well.
No, yeah, there's a lot of this. And
I mean, I think it's definitely pretty clear in my mind, at least, that Andrew Garfield's probably the best actor in the movie. I mean, I think Tom Holland's great, but just in terms of the depth that he's able to bring, I think Andrew Garfield showed not only like the jokey Peter Parker that he was in his movies, but also the insane grief he had over Gwen. Which was definitely the standout of the movie for me, is when he catches MJ at the end.
Yeah, I think this movie definitely shows what a lot of people thought. Andrew Garfield's a good Spider-Man, just in not so great movies, or okay at best movies.
Hey,
definitely.
Put some respect on those movies, man.
I like the first one. Okay, the second one.
I don't. Hot take for you. I don't think there's a bad Spider-Man movie. I really don't think any of them are bad.
You can get some enjoyment out of all of them for sure. I mean, I haven't seen those, but I will say, as someone who has not seen those movies, I mean, I can tell you within this movie, my 2 least favorite characters are probably Electro and Lizard Man. They're just kind of nothing characters.
He was there. He felt more out of the villains. The one that's like, okay, we need one villain per movie. Amazing Spider-Man 1. Okay, Lizard, you're here.
Yeah.
Lizard was like kind of nothing, but he didn't do enough that really like made me mad he was there. Like, I'm not gonna say.
He was just fodder for them to beat up.
I mean, I think it was a reason he was trapped in a truck.
That was very strange.
That was strange.
We don't want to animate this lizard anymore than we have to. We're just gonna put him in the truck for a little bit and come back.
And in terms of Electro, it's weird because they obviously were trying to fix him from the monstrosity that he was in Amazing Spider-Man 2. But it just seemed weird just because he was such a nerd in the first one, or in his movie. And then in this one, he's like, he just looks like Jamie Foxx. And
he's basically just playing Jamie Foxx, like generic Jamie Foxx character. He was just he was so one note to me.
I don't really care about that stuff.
I think they handled it really well. Like, I think
it was okay.
I think they did Electro really well, because the way I took it, it's definitely a retcon for sure. But I do kind of take it as like, he was pulled out from right when he died, like at the Amazing Spider-Man 2. So he wasn't really a nerd then anymore, because he had already went through like all the shit that he went through. He was already becoming like really ticked off at the world and everything. So I feel like he kind of had that attitude already. And sure, he looks like Jamie Foxx, doesn't look like Max Dillon anymore, but they try to explain that with like the energy in the universe is kind of like different, which it's a comic book movie, so I buy it.
Although I will say Electro is the number 1 plot hole, I think, in the movie.
Yes.
I don't know if y'all have seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to explain that? Well,
just that, Doctor Strange explains early in the movie that, oh no, everyone that knows Peter Parker as Spider-Man is coming into our universe, and Electro never figures that out. In fact, they even allude to that whenever, at the end of the movie, Andrew Garfield takes his mask off and he's like, oh, I thought you were a black guy, basically. And it's like, well, it kind of breaks the movie a little bit, but okay.
Yeah, the fact that they even directly say it, like they were aware of it in the movie, it's like, oh. There
are definitely a couple things with the villains where it's like, okay, you just kind of want this thing to happen, and you're not even changing things to make it work. Sometimes you're just kind of doing it anyway. I mean, there's stuff like Doc Ock knowing that Green Goblin is Osborn. Admittedly, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but it's like, I don't think anyone ever technically knew. Especially not at the time Doc Ock would have died.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones for me, these are kind of the minor, somewhat more minor nitpicks, but I don't know. Especially rewatching the second time, Sandman fighting with the villains makes absolutely zero sense, because the entire time he was like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. Please just send us home. And all the other villains were like, no, we want to stay here. And then suddenly the villains attack them and run away. And he joins the people that are doing the opposite of what he wants, instead of joining Spider-Man, who wants to send him home. It's like, they're literally fighting to stay, to do the opposite of what you want. So like, why are you fighting with them? That made no sense.
See, this is where I'll say it made sense for me, because Sandman, A, doesn't really trust people. He was already getting kind of pissed at Peter and things like that. And B, at the end fight, he's not really fighting with them. He's just trying to get the box. Like, he even says, like, hey, give me the box, Peter.
He's just trying to push the button. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's like, bro, you're not doing it. He's like, you literally send us home when you're not doing it. Give me the box.
But he has no reason to align with them either. They should be fighting the Sandman too, because Sandman wants to hit the button and they don't. And they're at the end there, they literally, it's like the three villains, the three heroes, like squaring off against each other.
I think
it's like
they're going to distract him enough to where he can get the box back. I don't think like he aligns with either one of them. He's just like, okay, well the villains will just it's headcanon, but it's like the villains will distract him as I get the box type of thing. It made sense in my mind.
Yeah, it can be a little, but I mean, in general, what did y'all think about like the overall plot of this movie? Like, after coming off of Far From Home, everyone knows that Peter's Spider-Man or whatever. And it's like, so what are they gonna do with this? I mean, what did you think about the answer being that he's going to Peter to make this? He's going to Doctor Strange to make this spell and everything, and just like that's generally the whole conceit of the movie, is the spell goes wrong.
Yeah, it was fast. Like, I think them doing the legal stuff was very fast, but I can't imagine it going a different way for like what they were trying to tell. So I didn't need a courtroom scene. As fast as it was, I do kind of get, okay, Matt Murdock, he's a good lawyer. You know, like there's no evidence, so it's like, there wouldn't have been a trial like that anyway. So it was a little bit of a fast like recap from like the last one, but I think there's enough that sticks because of that throughout the entire movie that it makes sense for me. As for him going to Doctor Strange, I was cool with it. It's definitely a better version of One More Day. So I was definitely glad to see like how they kind of fixed that, and I didn't mind Doctor Strange's role in it, because I feel like he kind of like, you know, dicks off in the middle of the movie, so it's like he's just not there anymore. So it's mostly a Spider-Man movie, so Doctor Strange is there to like introduce the whole plot and the theme, and then just leave.
It happened.
Yep.
Facts.
I don't know. Brent, you haven't been on quite as much stuff. This pretty much always happens to us on Discord, at least once or twice during a call. But continue.
I remember it a little bit.
Okay. Good old Spectrum.
Facts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in general, like I'm very split on this movie. Like, I really enjoy this movie a lot. I think it's a fun time. I've seen it twice, and it's a really fun ride. But there's a lot of like little things that just kind of bother me, slash like it's okay, but I would have rather something else. One of the biggest things is just this entire thing with Doctor Strange. Number one, like them introducing magic and everything to the MCU. Overall, I've liked it and it's been fun, but you always run the risk of leaning onto it too much to where it's just like the plot points just become very easy, where it's like, oh, we're just gonna like wish everything away, and it's like, all right, you know, like it just becomes less narratively satisfying to me. But honestly, the bigger deal than that is literally the entire conflict of this movie would be solved if Doctor Strange and Peter just talked for like 5 minutes before doing the spell. And like, the fact that Doctor Strange even says like, okay, I'm about to forget you. So it's like, okay, so you thought like, oh, we're friends, we have a rapport here. Yeah, I literally just told you, yeah, don't call me sir, we're friends and everything. But then you're like, oh yeah, sure, you want to get into college? Okay, I'm gonna completely forget you. We're not gonna like know any. We're not gonna be friends. We're not gonna do any of this. It's like, wait, what the fuck? You wouldn't mentioned some of this to him. And like this is like the ultimate on steroids version of if the characters just talk to each other, the plot would die, because this is literally the movie is like all based on that. So that's a little rough for me.
You said that like when you introduce magic, it becomes hand wavy. Like, oh, there's a spell, we fix it. I agree. I think they handled it in a good enough sense to where like the resolution, sure, like there's like the spell that wishes it away, but it also screws up Peter's life. Like there is like I feel like there is a consequence still for the spell, and so it kind of like covers that hand waviness for me. So I'm like, okay, the villains are gone, but like there's still like stakes here. And then for the whole like conversation thing, I agree. It definitely probably could have been solved, but I think that goes into like the Peter Parker like story thing where it's like Peter Parker always talks too much and screws things up and like never like this feels like a Peter Parker problem. So sure, it's a stupid problem, but I feel like it's a comic book Peter Parker problem. And that's a lot of Spider-Man stories. It's Spider-Man being stupid, messing up, and then fixing it with his big heart and things like that. So it didn't bother me because it's like a classic story type thing.
I totally agree with that. What were you talking about just before you brought up that point?
Peter like ruining his life by reversing that spell.
The spell. Yeah, I think that was a big part of it for me too, is that I liked that there was a consequence to the action. I think if it was, they did a good job of this in the trailer where it looked like they were just going to forget that he was Peter Parker, right? That looked like what the trailer was setting up. And immediately that becomes pretty clear that that is not the spell that worked, right, in the beginning. So I liked that they fooled us a little bit with that. And they did give us a spell that worked, but also, there was a cost to that. So I think that does help a little bit with the magic part of the MCU, is that there always needs to be some sort of consequence, or else it does become too much of a Deus Ex Machina type of thing. So
for sure, there were stakes and consequences, which I really enjoyed. Like for the first time, like it kind of felt like grounded in a sense. So it was cool that it was like in the magic plot to where, like you said, usually, this hand wave it like, oh, it's over, kind of thing.
Well, get ready for more consequences of Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness.
Let's go.
Freaking knows what's going on. Did you have any thoughts on?
Well, going back to I guess how this all started, you're saying like how what led in at the end of Far From Home led into this movie with the whole thing. Me and you have talked about it a million times. Darby and I were definitely on the boat that we really liked how Far From Home ended with the I didn't reveal, just because all the crazy stuff they can do with that. I actually wanted it to be kind of a more grounded thing, and like I was happy to see Matt Murdock in there, but I was kind of hoping once that reveal happened, it would be more of a Spider-Man / Daredevil movie. Like it starts with all the courtroom shenanigans, but then goes into, I don't know, fighting Kingpin or something, doing something crazy like that. So I'm kind of bummed that whole plot point was just kind of seemed to be used to do all these multiverse shenanigans, and I honestly don't think that was the original plan. I think they did what they did at the end of Far From Home, and they had some plans for it, but then it's like, oh, we can do this multiverse thing. Okay, how do we figure out how to do this? Okay, we'll do this. Bring Doctor Strange in. Okay, we got it.
Yeah.
Billions.
When you can make a whole movie off of that Daredevil thing, and they're out to get you, they're going to arrest you.
That's what I wanted.
You could make an entire movie out of that.
It seems like almost the entire first half, I felt like, was almost montages. Like it seemed like they were just trying to give us all this information so they could say, look, we kind of dealt with the end of Far From Home. Now let's get into, the multiverse stuff, which we want to see. So I do agree. They definitely could have made an entire new movie, but I'm still thrilled with what we got. I can understand that critique.
Yeah, I think ultimately, what I would have wanted in a perfect world is like this movie that we're talking about, or some variation of that, and then had this multiverse crossover thing next after that, because like Far From Homecoming into Far From Home felt like such a perfect first two acts of what's going to be like a trilogy. I know there would be more movies after, but like that arc, it felt like, oh shit, everyone knows he's Peter, and I just kind of wanted to see that explored to its like full logical end. And this movie definitely, I agree with Jeff. I mean, Spider-Man was about to be canceled after Far From Home, like with all that, and then this whole Sony thing happens. I think by no means was this supposed to be what would happen with this reveal. Like I think that was, I think that was doing what they could with the okay, we got to do this multiverse movie now. And I did a very good job with it, but it is definitely, and especially after going back and rewatching Homecoming, I'm like, yeah, this had a very different vibe. I really wanted to see like this Peter's story just on its own come to like, and just how freaking, I just think that Mysterio and Vulture are my, outside of Thanos, are my top two villains in this entire universe. Like, and it's not even particularly close. So I would love to have seen, like you said, what they did with the Kingpin or something like that. And it's just kind of what we got, what we could have gotten instead that kind of bumps me up.
See, I wouldn't change this movie. I think it happened when it should have, and I wouldn't want to change what happened or when it happened, because I think a Daredevil like co-op movie would be cool, but this movie really worked for me because it's this Peter that, and I'm sure we'll disagree on, because I don't hate Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I loved him when it came out. Just the more I think about it, the more like this Peter for me has like, I don't want to say everything's been easy for him, but it's like he's made decisions that I don't feel like had the consequences they should have. So I feel like this movie is kind of him doing that again, be like, oh, Doctor Strange, he's a wizard, you know, I'm part of the Avengers, he'll just fix everything. And it's like, oh no, like he made a decision that screwed up the multiverse and then screwed his life up. Like I feel like that's such a good arc for this Peter Parker to put him in the position where he is in the end of this movie. And I feel like, fuck, what was I gonna say? But yeah, I just kind of feel like it was a good spot. It needed to happen, you know. Like I wouldn't want to see a movie before this, you know. Like I feel like this is the position where this kind of Peter Parker needed to land, just like a consequence-based movie. Because I don't see this as a multiverse movie. Like I don't think, obviously, yeah, it's to sell toys to get people hyped and things like that. But at the same time, I don't think this movie is carried by the multiverse. The multiverse is consequences of his actions that end up screwing his life up in the end. And I feel like it's more of like a Peter Parker, you know, psychological mind thing that it is a multiverse movie for me.
Yeah, definitely, I can see that. I mean, this is a movie where I understand pretty much all viewpoints of it for sure. Yeah, I want to talk about good things. I have pet peeve. I have other things that we can address, but I definitely want to talk about like maybe our favorite parts in the movie and stuff. But there are a few other things that maybe you can help me with, because like another thing is the whole concept of like we're gonna fix all these people and make them better before we send them back. But they already addressed that they came over right at the moment before they died. Aren't you just sending this like really good, this well-fixed Green Goblin so that he can be stabbed through the heart with a thing?
Well, for that, it just kind of depends. Like when it says like the moment, if it's like literally the moment before, then yeah, before he got stabbed, sure. But it could be, I guess they were very loose on those terms, so who actually knows? And they didn't show us what happened after they got sent back.
Right, and that's part of and part of my problem is like if it is going to be the good version of it, like you've created, I don't know, you've created a new timeline or something, or you've made that timeline.
I mean, it's multiverse, so technically, like Defoe and Doc Ock are supposed to be from the same universe last timeline. Well, now they're technically going to two different ones, because without Green Goblin dying, probably Doc Ock would not.
And my whole thing, it doesn't like tear the movie apart, but I think for something this kind of like, again, hand wavy in the sense that like it's multiverse, you can do anything. They come from different things. They might be going different timelines, all this stuff. For me to really feel the stakes of this movie, and you're saying that like, oh, we fixed everyone, I think you're kind of required to show at least a montage of the aftermath of this. Because I feel like I never got that, like, we fixed these characters, and it's just like, so what was the outcome of this? Who fucking knows? And it's like, I feel like I needed at least a little bit, because like I didn't feel like the stakes were like completely nailed down and like closed there for me. Like I was like, Okay, so like it just ended up feeling like these characters are just here to fight Spider-Man and now they're gone. You know, it was like they didn't feel like real characters in the movie that have a full arc. It kind of just felt like, and whatever. And it's like just get them away, go.
Yeah.
Shoot.
I think it was like a reverse snap type thing where it's like your headcanon that they kind of approved. It's kind of like, oh, well, Hulk said in his head that everyone finds a safe place to come back. So if they're on an airplane, they're not going to come back in the middle of the sky, things like that. Like, I think there's some little clause in the Doctor Strange spell that's like, hey, well, maybe they're about to Spider-Man's about to kill him, and they're like, oh shit, hey, handshake. Because I mean, it does get a little bit weird because it's like this Tobey Maguire is in two different places that he's about to kill two different villains, and they come back. So it's like, who really knows? Like, it definitely is kind of like confusing in that sense, but not to like discredit any problem about this movie and defend everything. I just think the stakes for me definitely come in Peter Parker. So when it comes to the villains, I was invested in their stories, but I think everything connected back to Peter Parker's story, and I think that was what was most important for me.
For sure.
Yeah, I think I guess kind of backing that up, even I totally see the issues with that. And while I was watching, I was like, I don't really know how this makes sense. Like, are they still going to die, even if they're cured? Kind of like what you're saying. But I think the reason why it worked for me, and I could still have so much enjoyment from it, is that this seemed like a very Peter Parker thing to do. Whereas, someone like Batman is going to punch you until you're knocked out. Spider-Man's like, man, I just want to help you. I think that shined through really well through that scene, and with Aunt May kind of goading him to do this and the other Peters and everything. So even though it didn't make completely logical sense for me, I was pretty down with it.
For sure. I mean, yeah.
I agree.
In general, just trying to think of like my favorite moments and everything. For some reason, the Aunt May death overall didn't impact me nearly as much as I would have thought it would. But I do think that Tom Holland's acting was just incredible. I mean, Tom Holland his facial acting is crazy.
I've always thought he was a good actor, but I feel like in this movie it was like a different level. His grief in that scene, and then at the end, also when he's fighting the Goblin, I was just really blown away by him.
Yeah. He really stepped it up in this one. I was really happy about it.
Yeah, and getting that much more Zendaya with MJ. Like, I also think she's really good, especially after watching Euphoria recently. Like, she's stepped up as an actress for me. She's incredible.
I watched Euphoria recently. So good.
Oh, God, it's so
talk
good.
about that for 5 hours.
Hey, season 2 about to come out like 2 weeks. So.
Let's go, dude.
Let's go.
I know someone from USC who works on Euphoria, like as a production guy.
Oh,
yo, that's
shoot, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That show kicks ass. So good. Yeah, I don't know. What did anyone else have like some favorite moments or anything from the movie?
I mean, I already called out mine when Andrew Garfield's able to catch MJ, and just seeing the emotion on his face was unreal. That was the one time that I know my whole family went to see the movie. Mom, dad, my sisters, and my wife, and several of them were crying during that scene, and I definitely teared up too. I think that was just I guess if you haven't seen The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Darby, it doesn't have the same reaction.
I know I know. I've seen that scene.
Yeah, but I mean that even though that movie isn't particularly good, that scene was pretty wild for me watching it, even knowing it was coming.
Yeah.
So him able to have that redemptive moment was just really, really good. I love that scene. Yeah.
It's like the interactions between all the Spider-Mans just for there. I thought they were all really well done, and just like it was an obvious thing, but just them talking about Toby's like biologic webbing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And just all that.
I didn't notice it. I don't know if you did. We were all expecting him to do the point meme, and I didn't notice it the 2 times I was in the theater, but they technically did it, and it was so subtle that I didn't even notice it.
Same here.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I walked out saying like, "Oh my god, they didn't do the meme! I'm so surprised." And then I saw pictures later. I'm like, "Oh, I guess they did."
Yeah, I missed it.
definitely glad they didn't like ham fist it. There was definitely a little subtle way to do it that I enjoyed. Yeah, I think the whole, I don't want to, not philosophical conversation, but like the whole conversation they were having on the rooftop hit so well for me. Like I enjoyed that so much. It was everything I wanted. Like I was so scared that they were gonna come in the third act, beat a couple people and leave.
And bounce,
But
yeah.
they were there for like half the movie almost. Like they were able. I wish they had said more. Like I wish the conversation went a little bit differently. Like I get Tom being on edge after that, but I don't think he had to be like, "Oh my God, there's 2 other Spider-Men." But I would have liked if maybe he was like, kind of a little bit like, "Oh shit, you guys are Peter Parker? That's that's crazy."
Yeah.
But instead, he was like trying to fight him, which I get Aunt-May's side. So I don't like nitpick it too hard, but I wish there was a little bit other there. I wish I kind of wish Andrew would have talked about Uncle Ben a little bit more. He kind of backed up Toby a little bit, but I love that whole scene. Like they're both talking about their griefs and everything, and it's still weird. Like, can we talk about the Uncle Ben in the room? Like it is like a little bit weird that like after everything, Tom just did not mention Uncle Ben. I'm totally fine with Aunt May being his Uncle Ben. If you want to look at this trilogy as an origin story, 100% okay with that. I think it's a different take and I really enjoy it. I just kind of want to know what happened. Like, I think after like both of them saying Uncle Ben's name, Tom Holland wasn't like, yeah, Ben, I'm it's a little bit crazy.
That was definitely one of the weirder parts when you realize that, wait, was Ben even here in this universe? This is very strange.
It's either there wasn't an Uncle Ben unless they had a throwaway thing that none of us just remember, or he just died
in Homecoming.
Suitcase.
Yeah, in Homecoming, he says, after everything Aunt May's been through, and then Far From Home, there's the Ben Parker suitcase.
Okay. Well, then it's like, okay, he probably just died of kind of natural causes or the like, so it's not...
When they're at May's gravesite, there's no tombstone beside hers, I don't think. It's very
which
weird.
is weird because she's
or maybe he got divorced.
Parker, which means
That's
May
what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's like she's May Parker, so Ben Parker existed. So it's just kind of weird.
That's true.
Yeah. I was hoping that he was just a deadbeat. She just like kicked him to the curb. He was just like,
I ain't raising my nephew.
I ain't have this kid.
We promised no kids. Send it to the house.
It would have been so ham-fisted, but I just would have loved if Tobey Maguire showed up and Tom Holland was like, Uncle Ben.
No, I wanted George Costanza to be her Uncle Ben. The old watch.
Yes. I mean, that would have been the best way to do it.
But, no, I love what you were saying about these 3 movies being an origin story, because that is probably the most underrated thing that I've not really heard people been talking about that much with this movie. Is that this movie actually makes the MCU Spider-Man the Spider-Man that most people know, probably, or I don't know, most comic fans know, I guess. It's like, I know Darby and Jeff really liked Homecoming and Far From Home, but for me it was like, these are fine, good movies, but they never felt like Spider-Man movies to me.
I agree.
And
all right, time to have this conversation.
I was just super excited to see that at the end of this movie he is jobless. He is, I guess, trying to go to college, get his GED, whatever. He has no girlfriend. Apparently, Aunt May's dead now. He doesn't have an Avengers affiliation. It's just all this stuff that was weird with the MCU Spider-Man is kind of taken away, which I appreciate. And I think it really sets up the next trilogy or whatever to be something completely new. So I think it is weird that it took 6 movies for this Spider-Man to become Spider-Man. Yeah. But I do like, it's an interesting take, and it really sets up the future in a unique way.
Well, that's the whole thing, what you just said with the 6 movies, why I don't buy this being an origin story, because he fought Thanos. The son of a bitch. That's not an origin, and part of it, that's not an origin story in the sense. And honestly,
it's not
what?
A new chapter.
Yeah, and I know
this is the biggest split between 2 on 2. So
because I know we were gonna get this dark. We really don't care for that ending the way they left it.
The
It's-
ending is the one part of this
Oh,
movie I
come on.
hate.
It was so good.
No,
It
I
was
like
amazing.
I liked the way there was
I really don't.
consequences, but it feels so. This my main problems that come from this movie, like as much fun I have, if it stem from it feels like less from a storytelling perspective and more of a business marketing perspective. Like, okay, we need to have the big toys thing with the multiverse and all that kind of stuff. Again, it was fun, but it feels like that with the, like I mentioned earlier, transitioning between the two movies. And with the end, it's like, oh, we had some people that don't care for the Spider-Man or something, or we want to have a fresh new trilogy or a way out for Spider-Man. Let's do this.
Right, and just I mean, like put it in perspective, just to say, like, and I totally recognize that we are apparently in the severe minority in
Yeah.
feeling this way, and I recognize that, but
I do
what,
wanna
especially
ask, like-
going back to especially going back to just Homecoming and Far From Home, building up to this. This ending does kind of feel like, I'm sitting here building a Lego castle and I think it looks really good, and then suddenly these people come in from the room and be like, "Nah, we want to do this," and kicks it over and starts building it up this other way. Because like the end of this is the ending that people who don't like the Tom Holland movies absolutely wanted, where it's basically a reset of Spider-Man. It's like erases a lot of stuff and resets to, it's like, okay, we can start over. It's basically like, fuck this stuff and start over. And I get why people who don't like the Tom Holland movies are really excited about that. But to me, it just kind of feels like you came in this what to me, this was the most excited about Spider-Man I've ever been. Like those two movies, I like personally me, I mean, there's different people have different opinions, but like that is absolutely my favorite Spider-Man stories by far. And I just watched Homecoming. I've completely emboldened that once again. And this did feel like, people don't really like this. We're just gonna kind of reset this. And I'm like, God damn it, it's like let me see this
and it's
through.
kind of like, it doesn't feel like people like the Spider-Man movies, but it feels like it was just kind of a loud minority. I mean, it may not have been this, but it just kind of feels like it was a loud section of the fan base that they were just trying to appease and all that. And like, Will, you were saying about the Avengers, he lost the Avengers connection. Kind of, not really, because they remember Spider-Man. They just don't remember him being Peter.
That's the other thing we'll get to. I have another problem with just
So-
the ending thing, but yeah, go ahead.
So I wanna ask a question. It's gonna sound like an elitist question. I swear it's not. But how big are you guys like into Spider-Man? And like, do you? It sounds like, are you a big fan of like the classic story, or do you wish it was like changed up more like the MCU has been? Like, do you like that traditional Spider-Man story? Before I get into my point.
I'm honestly of the opinion, I don't care. I'm a fan of the original. I'm okay with new takes. I like what they were doing with this. Yeah, it was different from a lot of the things, especially in the mainstream. Like, it separated stuff from the movies enough, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think it needs to be like the other ones, like a lot of people really wanted with it. I mean, it could have gone either way. I've been fine. I just like what they were doing for it, and I don't know. In some ways, it's kind of like, let's just throw this aside for reasons.
Yeah, in general, I was almost out of superhero movies a few years ago. I'm like, this is getting very samey. Like, they're good, but it's just getting very samey. I like when there's different takes on these things. I like when there's just like, these are stories that have been told thousands and thousands of times. Like, I like it when it's like, we're going to do a twist on this. And a lot of other people like get very upset about that. But like, I just like, it's just as simple as I watched the Sam Raimi movies. I really enjoyed them as a kid or whatever. I even watched the animated stuff or whatever. I don't really read comic books. I'm definitely, of the four of us, the least into the stuff or whatever. But I enjoyed all that stuff. But these movies was like the first time. I mean, there's something very modern about it with Tom Holland and MJ and all of those or whatever. Like, especially going back and rewatching Homecoming, god damn, that movie is just... I never bought the, like, Peter Parker is a kid in high school and, like, that, like, he's a naive young kid more in, like, these movies than... I go back and watch the same Sam Raimi ones. I was like, this is a 30-something-year-old trying to be an 18-year-old, and it just feels very... I don't know. The Tom Holland ones feel a lot more authentic, and I've never completely bought the, like, he has Tony Stark's like tech or whatever, so he's not this homegrown Spider-Man. Even though like Far From Home, Homecoming and Far From Home were very much about him turning away that and being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man or whatever. And like, and I also just don't really care. I don't need him to be this, pigeonholed image of Spider-Man. I just liked what they were doing a lot, and this just kind of felt like people don't like this, so we're gonna wipe the slate clean. You know.
Okay, I have a lot to say, so
Go
I'll
for
take
it.
5
Go
minutes.
for it. Go for it.
So I agree with you that not everything has to stay the same. I do stand with that. Like I like different takes on it, which is why I'm 100% cool with Aunt May being the Uncle Ben. Like I do like things changing. My issue is when you take a character or a pre-established IP, I feel like there are certain tent poles and certain like character traits that make that character. So if you're writing a story for that character, you need to kind of like, you can't write Batman like you would write Superman, you know? It's just like you can't write Spider-Man like you would Iron Man. Not that it's like exactly the same, but just for the sake of my argument. I feel like there are certain tentpoles of Spider-Man that I wasn't getting with Homecoming and Spider-Man and Far From Home. I think Homecoming was a really good movie. I loved Homecoming. I loved Far From Home when I watched it too. But the more I think about it, Far From Home was doing the exact same arc that Homecoming did in my mind, and there's a different bunch of different ways to argue it, but I feel like Homecoming was the movie that was like, okay, I'm stepping out of Tony Stark's shadow. I'm becoming Spider-Man. Okay, cool. That was an awesome fight. He fought Vulture in the homemade suit. It was great. Far From Home was like the exact same thing in my mind. It was everyone asking him, hey, when are you going to be the next Iron Man? So again, he's trying to be his own superhero, stand out of the shadow. And there's a few other things you could say. You could say it's about him trying to live two different lives, but I feel like that's more of this movie than it is Far From Home. I feel like the central theme of Far From Home was again stepping out of shadow and being like relying on yourself, but it was the exact same arc. I don't feel like Tom Holland's Spider-Man had to deal with the struggles of responsibility and things that make Spider-Man who he is. You know, there are people that will like scoff when you say responsibility, be like, oh, Spider-Man fans just want responsibility, just want Uncle Ben to die. But that's what grounds Spider-Man, which is why Jeff was saying that he doesn't buy that this was like a 3 origin story thing. It really was, because to me, he fought Thanos, he was a superhero, but he wasn't Spider-Man. Spider-Man, I feel like it gets grounded when he loses Uncle Ben and now Aunt May. He loses his loved ones after something he could have prevented that he did himself, and he dedicates himself to being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which he was like helping people in his neighborhood before, but it was because he wanted to be an Avenger. Now he's saving people because he has that responsibility. With that great power comes great responsibility. There are certain aspects to the character that I think are crucial to making that character, and I don't feel like those were really honed in on in the other movies as much as they are now, and they're starting fresh with this whole clean slate. You could say it's because of the vocal minority, but I do think there's someone on the creative team being like, hey, these aren't like, we haven't made him Spider-Man yet. Like, let's at least like give him the traits of Spider-Man, make him deal with that grief and become the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I could probably ramble for like 10 more minutes. But...
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I even the point I'm about to make like makes it seem. I'm in general with like storytelling and all these things. I have a way more radical approach when you're like, you can't write Batman like Superman. I'm like, fucking why not? If it's interesting, you know, I'm like, if it makes an interesting story,
I'm cool with that.
You know, I'm like, but I don't even think that this is like, I don't know, like this felt like I felt like a kid again watching Homecoming and watching those or whatever, and it felt like Spider-Man to me. I mean, it felt like a very interesting, cool new take on it that I got, like, especially having just rewatched it. I was like, the whole he gets like he doesn't have these like struggles of being a kid trying to do this. It's like I don't know. It just felt like a very what I think of as Spider-Man type of story, just with a different coat of paint, you know, with a different backdrop, with the MCU as a backdrop, because like in this universe, the MCU is very much like very present there and everything. Tony Stark, Avengers, all of that is very present, and that's how they set up this Spider-Man. I just thought that like Homecoming did such a good job of like, yeah, he gets all this like Tony Stark Avengers tech. he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and then that's like part of. I think that's part of what makes him Spider-Man to me is that he's a naive kid out there, doing this.
I also just don't think this is Peter. Like, not to say this isn't Peter Parker, but I think a lot of people have, and sure, there are a million different comic. You could say this isn't like they did in the comics, but there's comics where Peter Parker is a rebel spy or something like that. Like there are different ways to do it. But I feel like in my interpretation, Peter Parker isn't always like a shy, nerdy, like fanboy type kid. Like when Peter Parker gets bit by the spider and he loses Uncle Ben and he goes through all these like hardships, Peter Parker is an asshole. Like Peter Parker is like not a great person, but he has like that good heart to know like, okay, he's kind of like dealing with hormones and grief and he's going through all these things, but he still has a heart to where he wants to save people and do the right thing. But I don't feel like he's always a shy, naive kid. And you could perceive that, and that's fine. You could write different characters in different ways. I don't feel like they ever showed the depth of Peter Parker until this movie. Like when he's about to kill Green Goblin, Peter Parker would do that. And I've also seen people say like, oh, it felt wrong to me that like this Tom Holland's about to kill Green Goblin when like in the same movie, Toby pretty much says and confirmed that he killed that robber who killed Uncle Ben. So it's like something that Toby did. So it's like that felt like a Peter Parker thing to me. There's more
and like Green Goblin's in the universe and just killed
anger.
Aunt May. I mean, of course he's gonna do.
Exactly,
if he's gonna be in the universe, this is not like a jokey thing. It's not like a non-canon thing. He's in there and he killed someone. It's like
yeah.
Well, I didn't really know that there were a lot of people that were unhappy with the previous couple movies. I am totally okay with different takes. This is someone who likes Man of Steel a pretty good bit, even though some people think that movie is antithetical to who Superman is.
Movie's pretty good. I like Man of Steel.
But so I mean, I'm down with Homecoming and Far From Home. Like I said, I didn't feel like they were Spider-Man movies, but I also wasn't upset about them necessarily. They just weren't how I thought Spider-Man or what I pictured Spider-Man to be. I think Spider-Man PS4 did a great job of showing Spider-Man. But at the same time, I would definitely be lying if I didn't say that I did get some sort of satisfaction from the ending of this movie, just seeing that they are going in a more familiar direction, I guess, to what I know Spider-Man to be. But I mean, I'm interested, Darby, Jeff, what are the facets of the MCU Spider-Man that you think you'll miss?
I mean, especially if that MJ Ned relationship does not get reverted, which I just hate it coming to the end of the movie. I'm like, I really hope that there's some magical spell to make this movie not happen. It's like that's such a shitty way to feel, It's like, but that's how I feel. It's like that was like my like. I think that trio, that relationship was like infinitely. That's like probably my favorite relationship in all of the MCU, and certainly better than whoever Tobey Maguire and that MJ's relationship was.
See, that's so funny to me that you think that, because I mean, I like their relationship. I like Ned and MJ as well, especially MJ as these characters, but like the idea that Ned had a guy in the chair, that Spider-Man had a guy in the chair was like the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard when Far From Home came out. So I don't know. I've never liked the trope of the person in the chair, like, watching the superhero giving them intel. I've never liked that. So
I mean, they like make fun of it all the time. I mean, I don't know. I think
I think that I did like the guy in the chair thing. You can tell it's like a kid in a superhero universe.
Well, they're like they're joking.
Everyone's got a guy in the chair. Let me be yours type thing. I didn't
I also think one thing that they kind of I guess I would say they messed up with. You guys probably liked it, but they definitely tried to do Miles Morales and Peter Parker at the same time when they did MCU Spider-Man, and I think that's kind of confused things as well, because Miles Morales, as you can tell from the game, is very much more of the I have all these friends, and more of that teamwork type of thing. I mean, Ned is basically
Genki
taken straight from Genki. So I think it's just this confusion of Spider-Man attributes at this point too. But yeah, to each his own.
Yeah, I get you. It's gonna be weird to see how they kind of like introduce Miles and they do Genki and things like that. Hell,
Mhm.
they might switch it up and Harry becomes Miles's friend. Like,
Why
who
not?
knows,
Yeah, I mean,
man?
makes sense. Did you
But
have any more answers to what is that?
as far as the music, I don't know. I just feel like the whole thing is just kind of losing the connections with MJ and Ned, and we'll just kind of be spinning around in circles because if it's either like, okay, well, a lot of this stuff just kind of doesn't matter. Like, we'll just throw away this relationships, or okay, he'll get them back, and then we just gotta waste time to kind of get back that relationship. And kind of with everyone that's not them forgetting, it's like, okay, well, he meets the Avengers and takes us. Oh, my name's Peter Parker. Okay,
Yeah.
we've kind of met, but here's us meeting again. It's kind of like it's in some ways like, okay, I kind of don't see the point in it, but it's also just kind of annoying. I don't know.
It's just so messy because this is my other. I've been driving to probably my central problem, my biggest problem with this ending, and the reason why, like I said, this ending is the one thing I hate in this movie. The more I think about it, the worse it gets. The whole ending with just it wishes. All right, so no one knows Peter Parker exists, and as far as we can see in this world, it's like nothing really fundamentally changes. It's like Spider-Man still exists. All the Spider-Man stuff, all the stuff that Spider-Man helped with and everything still happened, but like people just don't know that Peter Parker exists.
Yeah.
That just so much like seems to go against my entire idea of what Spider-Man and Peter Parker are, because it's separating them into two things. It's like there's Spider-Man and Peter Parker and they can exist without each other. Like you erase Peter Parker and Spider-Man was just there. Spider-Man was with the Avengers. Spider-Man did all this or whatever, and you wipe Peter out of it, nothing changes. I'm like, that like number one it feels wrong to me, and number two it's just there's so many areas where it like suddenly just doesn't really make sense. Key one is Happy apparently still being with Aunt May, even though the entire reason he was with Aunt May was because Peter was her nephew.
It's definitely
So, like,
very,
how
very
does-
messy.
Yeah, so it's like I met her
Yeah,
through Spider-Man. It's like, wait, what? And if that changed, then that would be a domino effect of changing so many other things, because Happy and Peter's relationship was important, or I guess it wasn't important. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then like that, like going back into the Avengers and to everything else, there's so many things that it's like, surely at some point, if Peter being wiped out, some part of the Spider-Man story would be fundamentally different at this point. And there's no way you could reach the same plot. The same like timeline. I mean, am I crazy for like? I just feel like this is like a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, and something is kind of it's going with what they were saying about you guys were saying about the essence of Spider-Man is everyone kind of forgetting him. Like, I think you guys can agree, like, as far as the down to earth stuff, like Peter having those connections and having like the Aunt May and like MJ and May whatever friends like Harry Osborn and stuff kind of help with that. But now he has nothing besides Spider-Man connections.
Yeah, I think
That's true.
there's a couple things I was gonna respond to. The Happy thing, I think it's because so my headcanon is that Spider-Man was there for the banquet thing. She helped Spider-Man. She doesn't need to know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker or Aunt May. Well, technically, if you go on the theory that like you can't change the memory of the dead, so Aunt May probably knew he was Spider-Man. All the Aunt May stuff happened. So Spider-Man was there at the banquet. Happy came on behalf of Stark. Yada yada yada. They met Aunt May. But my rebuttal to I think Darby saying something about like you take away the essence of Spider-Man when everyone doesn't know he's Peter Parker. I disagree because in any big comic book event, Spider-Man never takes off his mask. Like anytime Spider-Man meets a superhero or anything, like they have to tell him like, bro, take your mask off. Like he will never reveal himself. There's so many people that don't know he's Peter Parker. That's why even when
Yeah.
Civil War happened, like in the comics, even like a bunch of the superheroes didn't know by the time he got revealed. I don't feel like that takes away anything. Spider-Man, they're always kind of two different entities kind of thing. Like he's Spider-Man deep inside, but it's like Spider-Man is, that's why we always say like he's a good Peter Parker, but he's a better Spider-Man because like they're two different things. He's able to like escape type thing.
I mean, but hell, even MJ and Aunt May knowing. I mean, it changes everything with Happy and with just lots. I don't know. It's just it feels weird to me. It feels very messy to like suddenly you have to like the story is completely changed now just with the snap of a finger. Which
Yeah.
I know it's funny.
No, I just realized they killed Aunt May, so they don't have to worry about that plot hole.
Basically, but it's still going back. It's like it still makes no sense that Happy had a relationship with her like this or whatever, or if they are in a relationship, then it happened in a completely different way because Peter.
Well, he
like,
said he met through Spider-Man, but yeah, I know that. I know. What you
Like,
mean.
you would have to completely change history to make that happen, and if you change history there, like even down to like Happy's in a different spot than he was in this, I mean, like so many things can change, and that's just like you kind of just have to be like, I mean, whatever.
Well, and it's also because the whole thing is all about memory.
and like
And like
now
so,
when
so the
we-
video footage of Peter is gone.
well, and when we see like
Yeah, that's the only thing.
I'm just fucking bummed too that when we see like some other characters, like they don't like I mean, I guess not many characters know Peter. It's just like it's just fucking messy. I really hate plot points.
Ned
like
and MJ
this.
are still best friends because reasons.
Right? Yeah, that's another. It's just not.
Yeah,
It's
I
not where
mean-
I wanted this to go. I hate these type of plot points where it's just like we're not going to explain fucking anything, and you just have to kind of super suspend your disbelief to get there. It's just not where I wanted Spider-Man to go freely.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it's like if we do continue with Tom Holland Spider-Man, it's either okay, a lot of the stuff that happened in past movies kind of doesn't matter.
That's what it
They'll throw it away, or we'll have to spend at least half of a movie probably, or they'll immediately do or spend a full movie trying to fix this.
just basically take your favorite Spider-Man thing, comic, movie, anything like that. This just feels like you took that and you're like, oh yeah, that thing you love, it doesn't matter. It's like, all
definitely think
those
it's a soft
relationships getting built up doesn't really matter. It's
Yeah.
like that just kind of feels shitty.
And hasn't Peter lost enough at that point? He lost his surrogate father, he lost his aunt, he's lost a lot of people. And now he lost his life. In a
no
way.
matter
sense.
no matter my feelings on the Tom Holland movies, I kind of like it just because it's like it's just a comic thing to do to like soft reboot the universe every once in a while. I think it's just I guess I'm just used to it at that point, but I think it's a fun little thing. Just the shot,
Yeah.
man, that end scene was so beautiful, man. I loved it so much. Like him making the
It's-
suit, doing the police scanner, jumping out the
So
window with
pumped.
the suit in the snow. So good. It was so good.
It's definitely pretty clear, and I guess it probably has been for a while now, that the movies are just as complicated as the comics now, that they
Yeah.
literally had to do a soft reboot, which, yeah, like he was just saying, maybe it is just a comic thing to be like, yeah, whatever. Actually, I have this shirt from one of my favorite podcasts that says, nothing makes sense, nothing matters, because that's just the motto of comics. It's like,
Pretty
whatever,
much.
this is just happening, we're just going to go with it. So maybe I'm just more inclined to just be like, whatever. I'm just in for the ride. But I can totally see why the ending is totally unfulfilling for someone that enjoyed the last two movies and feels like
Yeah.
everything is gone now.
And I'm
I
not a
do
comic
feel
book
like-
guy, so I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
This
it feels
ending
like
makes me
I
just
get
feel
you guys are
like, fuck
saying,
this.
and I'm there with you as far as used to this. But it's kind of weird
Yeah.
when it's just kind of one character and not the universe at large.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it definitely like shakes things up a little bit in terms of like, oh, what happened to Captain America? But that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I have always said that like I do think eventually like there are a lot of people that follow everything the MCU does, but I do think one day it's gonna get so that's gonna get so complicated that like we are gonna get like Secret Wars and reboots and things like that are gonna like have to shake things up like in the comics. Like it's so weird in the comics that DC does a good thing that I really enjoy where they change the universe every like 5 years so they keep different continuity. Marvel's always like, all right, every story is from 616. So it's like you have 60 years of Spider-Man stories that are all in the 616 universe. So I feel like one day the MCU is going to have to get to that point and do a little reboot. So I think this is just a little bit of like, hey, get used to it. Here's a little breadcrumb.
I mean, it just felt like. I mean, I don't mean to simplify it that much, but it just felt like if you were unhappy with how Spider-Man movies were going, you're super happy because it kind of just blew everything up. If
Yeah.
you were really happy where it's going, it's like one side won, one side lost, and I feel like I'm at the losing
Yeah,
side.
it's kind of like I said earlier. This kind of I get what you're saying, but this one kind of feels more less like, oh, this is what the story we want to tell, and more corporate money business side of things
And it also
compared to some other MCU stuff.
because again, this was not the movie that was going to be made. It definitely got this way, and it just almost feels like they're like, oh, we're unhappy where this Spider-Man's going, but we don't want to do another reboot, so we'll just like another actual reboot.
Hey, but
Sorry, just one last thing. It's so funny you guys say that because I feel like this is the least corporate Spider-Man movie. Because I love the MCU. I grew up on it. I love the MCU. But man, the MCU has a style, and I don't know if I'm starting to like love everything they do anymore. This felt the least MCU out of all the movies, and I was so happy about it.
It's certainly not the least corporate with the Sony.
Well, the corporate is more of the Sony's part of it than Marvel and them playing. It's kind of more what I meant.
Like, this whole movie happened because
the
Sony owns the movie IP for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That is the entire.
I get what you're saying.
Like,
I just mean in the like aspect that I don't feel like Sony was breathing over John Watts and the screenwriters' necks and being like, "Hey, do this." Sure, there was probably conversations about the multiverse. But it wasn't like a Sam Raimi where they're like, no, you can't tell this really good Spider-Man story. Throw in Venom, and then Venom screws everything up, and they change plot points and things like that. It definitely felt like the screenwriters were able to tell a story they wanted to tell. They just ended up using the multiverse. That's just how I look at it, though.
I think within the parameters, yes, but I do think, like, yeah, this is not where the Tom Holland story was going. This was, if you want to use the Spider-Man, you're going to include these other, you're going to include our Andrew Garfield and Raimi, all this other stuff.
So up until the final spell or whatever, I mean, how were you feeling about the movie?
I mean, again, like, and I knew that it was going to come out here or whatever. Like, I was going to seem like I hate this movie. I had a very good time. I saw it twice. I wouldn't have gone and seen it twice if I didn't have a really good time watching it. So I was really enjoying it. It's like the minute to minute, it's very fun to watch. Up at that point, I was disappointed. I mean, I was disappointed, like, just only in the sense that, again, this is just not the direction. I wanted a full third like movie in the vein of Far From Home, you know, that kind of thing, to like really, like we said, the Daredevil Kingpin, like we're gonna explore this. Everyone knows Peter Parker thing. I would have. That's the perfect movie. Would have been like we're gonna I rewatched Homecoming, and it's so much more slow paced than No Way Home, which I really, really fucking enjoyed. It's like I really, really liked that kind of slow pace. We're gonna let every one of these plot points hang and everything up until like that Vulture reveal. Like it was such a smaller scope, but it made everything feel more impactful and breathe more. So I was already disappointed by that point a little bit, but I was still really enjoying it. The ending is just where I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a big hang up for me, and I know that this is gonna, you know. But also, just watching it, Homecoming was like so far and away a better movie, in my opinion. Like far and away. Just watching it, just, you know.
I mean, I just feel like it's impossible for me to think about this movie in any kind of objective sense. Just like how Endgame for me was, I'm sure you've seen this going around, but I said this right after I came out of the theater, just like how Endgame was almost 10 years of storytelling, I felt like this one was, you know, since I was 8 years old, it's like it was all building to this. So it's just hard for me to view this as anything except for incredible, just because I was able to see all these characters in a sense that I haven't seen in such a long time.
Yeah, I get that.
So
yeah, I guess
Toby for the win.
I guess I do want to say, like, I know I've like defended this movie so much. I'm right there with you in the sense that, like, I do honestly really like Homecoming. I was in love with it. It was my favorite movie when I watched it. Like, I loved the movies I grew up on, like all of this, and I loved Far From Home when I saw it. So I'm in the sense where, like, I am bummed that like this universe that I did enjoy, like when I was a little bit younger, is kind of like gone. But I think I'm just more optimistic about the future also being like a comic book fan and liking the comic book direction it's going. But that's why it's like so conflicting for me, because it's like I like both aspects and I don't know which one I like more type thing. So it's like I like both sides to it. I don't really know where I align myself. Yeah. So I think I'm just more optimistic.
Yeah, that's fair.
But okay, so let's transition. How do can we agree on being happy that Tom Hardy is not going to be in this universe?
Like, get out of here. If it's just
drop the symbiote by Tom.
Drop your goo and peace out.
I would have loved to see how they would do it, but it is a.
I would not have.
better
I
option that he
disagree.
wasn't in.
It
No,
could have
I
been
would've
fun.
loved it.
Well, it could have been fun that if in the post-credits scene he gets to New York says like 2 words to Tom and then bounces. That could have been fun.
Stay in Mexico, man. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. But I am glad that it's just going to be a post-credit scene
Yeah.
little
No, this-
joke and bye-bye.
That's the best case scenario. 'Cause I thought we were going to be robbed at the MCU's take on Venom. And instead,
Yeah.
now we're not.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Because,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
have y'all
really
seen
worried.
Venom? That movie is absolute garbage. God, I hate
No,
the
it is
first one.
not. Venom is
Tom Hardy is
amazing.
such a
Venom
nothing
2
character.
is amazing.
Man. Is such a nothing character.
I saw the first
Sorry,
one.
I shouldn't be so
literally
mean.
couldn't bring myself to watch the second one.
I
second
don't
one is
know
so
what I'm gonna watch.
good.
I will never see
No.
that movie.
I haven't seen
I'll
either.
never
Creepy
see
as
that.
hell,
Thank,
man.
thank
It's
you,
fun.
Will. Thank you, Will.
The Tom Hardy scene does not make me want to watch those.
I just like it's not even Tom Hardy's fault. They gave him nothing. That character is just completely.
I will say- It is funny how hard Tom Hardy goes in those movies for no reason.
Yeah.
no reason.
Like,
yeah.
why are you here? It's like you're just.
Okay, sorry. Will continue.
No, I was just saying how funny it is that Tom Hardy is in those movies at all, much less that he is acting like a madman. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm super thrilled that there's a hint of a symbiote in the MCU now, because I
Yes,
was also
yeah.
worried that we weren't gonna get a black suit thing, and I just feel
Yeah.
like that's such an integral part to who we know Spider-Man to be.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, to kind of go with this whole thing, a kind of bummer thing about this whole multiverse thing in general. Not that it's bad. Again, I enjoyed what they did with it and everything, but overall, but it is a kind of a bummer because we're probably not going to get Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
We're not getting those
yeah.
versions of the characters in here. They can still kind of do them and maybe play.
It-
They maybe play that Peter kind of knows them, but it's also can be
I
good
was
that.
kind of weirded out. Sorry, I was kind of weirded out when Norman said something about like Oscorp not existing. I was like, what?
Yeah,
It was
well, it's kind of like,
very
okay,
strange.
it's like MCU fans you're not getting a Green Goblin here besides this one. Forget about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, Tom Holland's
was
talking about
unfortunate.
how that might be his last Spider-Man movie. So who freaking
I mean, they
knows?
did
Well,
confirm like 3 more.
yeah. They confirmed that he was working in a new trilogy.
And
Doesn't seem like he's especially happy about it.
and we
Yeah,
know
'cause he
contract
just said
wise,
he's taking a break from acting.
Yeah.
So it's like,
we know contract wise he's under contract for one non-Spider-Man movie, some other MCU appearance in another person's movie. Though I don't think we know what that is yet.
No.
Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil, give it to me.
dude.
You owe me
Dude, I was
this.
so excited. I was so excited just 20 minutes in when I saw Charlie Cox. I mean, I was
I
paying
know,
attention to
man.
leaks and stuff. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's gonna be there, but I was so happy to see him again.
I did see after the fact that from leaks he there was apparently multiple other cut scenes with him in it, so it's kind of a bummer we didn't get
I
those.
need the Blu-ray. I need the deleted scenes so bad.
Dang it!
Anyone
my
hasn't
camera.
watched Daredevil?
Go back up.
Daredevil season 3 is one of the best superhero media things of time.
I'm just glad that if you're gonna keep anything from the Netflix verse, like obviously,
Daredevil
Netflix
and
shows
King's
that,
Landing.
that's the one. That's the
So
actor you
good.
keep in this.
I just kind of wish Daredevil would stay with Netflix. Like, I don't know if I want it to be on Disney Plus, but we'll just have to.
It'll
see
be
how it
interesting
turns
if
out.
they soft reboot that too. So
Yeah,
we're already
I'm
getting
sure-
a reboot of.
I
Spider-Man.
guess yeah. Do we know?
Yeah.
I wonder if this is like supposed to be canon, the same Netflix show one, or if it's
Well,
just they keep the
okay,
actors.
so-
Like,
It was in the MCU.
So
yeah, all of those
Well,
were supposed.
I got
to be in
something
the
to
MCU,
say,
they
but
stopped,
it's
like-
not related to Spider-Man. Spoilers. Is
Okay.
everyone okay with
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
announce
yeah,
Hawkeye
yeah.
spoilers. Skip ahead.
Yeah,
a little
Hawkeye
bit if you want,
spoiler. I mean, Kingpin's in it. Do you guys know that?
Yeah.
And the actor has
Yeah.
said it's the same
But,
Kingpin
y'all-
from both of them. From the Daredevil series is the same one in Hawkeye.
But
Yeah, it's-
also, they kind of threw a. I'm still kind of confused about the finale of Hawkeye. Did y'all watch that yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's alive.
Where they, like-
Yeah, he's
yeah, I
definitely
mean, he
not
has
dead.
to be alive, right? They didn't show it.
well,
It's
well,
very weird.
well, also that, and apparently it is a complete call to something in the comics where Echo does do that exact same thing to Kingpin, and he lives.
Yeah, trust me, I'm in a Daredevil Facebook group. People are not happy about that episode. The people
There's
are
an
not
Echo
happy
series.
about
He's
that.
going to live, and
Yeah,
Charlie
he's
Cox will
definitely
probably
gonna
be
live.
in it.
Plus, I don't think
Yeah, oh,
Kingpin
he
can
has
take
to
a
be in
bullet.
that.
Do you
Yeah.
guys know that?
Hmm?
Do you guys know if like Comic Kingpin can like even take a bullet? I didn't really
I
think
have
he could.
no idea.
I don't. It seems
Yeah.
like with every version of Kingpin, they play with how vulnerable / super strong he
yeah.
is. Because it feels
Yeah.
like the one in Hawkeye was definitely had more like super strength for shit going
if
on.
it slips right
Yeah,
between
for
them vital
sure.
organs, he's good. Just let it slip right in between. He's fine.
Yeah, 'cause he's supposed to have like no fat. He's supposed like all his fat's supposed to be like straight
But shoot.
muscle.
Yeah.
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 I mean, if they wanted to kind of make it more believable, they could technically, if they wanted to, be like, okay, he got a little bit of what Luke Cage got going on.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone else have any parting thoughts on No Way Home? Brent, Will, we're good. We can disagree, but
Yeah. I love
have
you,
a
man.
good
It's
time
all
doing
right.
it. Very good. Very good.
But do we talk about the
well-
Doctor Strange trailer here? And it's technically part of the movie.
Oh yeah.
We've been going an hour
Dude, it
15,
looks
man.
So good.
It does
Everyone
look-
watch What If, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They made
that's the
What
one
If
thing I haven't
required.
seen.
I ended up watching it
Yeah.
shortly beforehand because I figured there was going to be a Doctor Strange scene, like post-credit scene. I was like, okay, there's a chance they could go there. And I was right.
With multiverse, I kind of figured something from What If would cross over in
Yeah.
some way. I didn't know how important it would be, but I figured something would cross
Yeah.
over. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. That was a blast.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Thank
me.
you so much.
Toby's the best. Toby's the best Spider-Man. You heard it here.
Andrew's the best.
I'm
All of
the
us have
best.
different ideas.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Jeff Mayo is my favorite
This is
Spider-Man.
I'm the best
Wait,
Spider-Man. We all know it.
Freaking, I mean, wait. Can we all agree that Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie?
Yeah, probably so. It's up
Okay.
there for
All right.
sure.
All right, there we go. Hell yeah.
That or Spider-Man 2.
Agreed.
We get 2 more Into the Spider-Verses, baby. Let's go. Let's go. All right, thank you guys. Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Peace.
That's not what I want.